We are going to start out with you, though. How did you get to lacrosse and East Carolina?
So I actually started playing probably when I was like 5 years old, just with rec league, and eventually started playing club in fourth grade. This is when I was back in Maryland, so there was a hotbed of lacrosse. I met so many amazing people, so many amazing athletes that I ended up seeing like this weekend in the Final Four and the championship and everything. So I went to my first high school was a public high school, and um, we weren't necessarily the best at lacrosse, but eventually I ended up transferring to a private high school, Glenelg Country. And again, so many of my teammates that I met there were at playing or going on to play at such a high level. I tore my first ACL freshman year of high school, so I missed like the first big recruiting year. Was that summer before the rules changed to after junior year started. And so I was kind of worried. I wanted to play at the collegiate level, but I wasn't sure where I was going to end up because I did miss that big first year. And that's when my club coach emailed me and said, "Hey, ECU's starting a new program. I think you would love this school. I think it would be a perfect fit." And I went there junior year and absolutely fell in love the second I stepped on campus, and ended up committing shortly after that. And so I was a part of the second team. The inaugural year was my senior year of high school. So I got to watch and see what everything was about. And I think the most special thing was my class talks about it all the time. We really took a chance on nothing. We didn't know how it was going to go. There wasn't a team yet by the time we all committed, and we were just excited to build something new. And being able to be a part of that for the past 4 years was absolutely amazing to see where we started and how we ended up. And we know that we're just going to keep continue to get better over the years.
So that is interesting because the majority of the athletes that come on this podcast come from storied programs,
Hmm.
programs that they knew about freshman or sophomore year of high school, and
Yeah.
coaches that reached out to them with years of experience, national championships, conference championships.
Yeah.
What did the coaches at ECU tell you to entice you to come to their school when they really didn't have a background of any modicum of success?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I came on like a Friday, and then I had a scheduled meeting with the coach on Saturday. So I just went on tours and stuff around there. And my mom was saying, "What are you going to say to her in your meeting?" And I said, "Where do I sign?" Like, I literally loved it. I was so excited. I thought the atmosphere was so amazing. And that's the biggest selling point, I think, for not only my class, but the class above me before there was even a team, was the community aspect of Greenville. It's just so tight knit. It's like in the South and more towards the beaches and like Eastern Shore and everything. But just like the community, everyone from Greenville loves ECU, and like everyone that's whether you're like a little child or literally babies at tailgates with their parents and grandparents, and there's so many variety of age groups, and everyone just loves to come and support their fellow uh, athletes and everything. So I think that was the best thing, because I did go to a football game that Saturday and I could see all of these people. It wasn't just the student section, the whole stands were packed at the football game. And it was just so cool to see that and see everyone rile around all the teams. And I could just tell that it was something that I would really enjoy.
And then you got there in freshman year, you had another season-ending injury. Was it another ACL?
Yes. And the other knee.
Which knee was it this time?
So I have to look down at my scars. So it was my right knee the first time and my left the second time. And I think this is a funny story actually, because I think it was in October. So I had about 2 months of playing, and the class that was coming in under, it was their official visit. So they saw it all go down and they were like, "Oh my gosh." And even to this day, they're like, "I'll never forget that day." But I got hurt, and I was just like really upset because I was like, "Oh no, not again," whatever. And my coach looked at me. She's like, "Nope, you're not thinking that. We're not thinking that. We're going to think positive things and we'll go from there. You're good. And then I was like, oh, like I literally took a deep breath and I was like, okay, I'm good. Like we're going to be fine. And it ultimately came down to tearing another ACL. But I think seeing how supportive my coach was literally from the second it happened, she said, we're going to figure this out and we're going to be there for you. And do not worry. Like you have the support staff too. You have amazing athletic trainers. There's so many people that will be there for me along the way.
And then as you were rehabbing, COVID happened.
Yes. So I got through the freshman year and then fall was fine. I was amped up, ready to go. And yeah, right after that, halfway through the season, it was gone again. And I don't know, it was just so crazy because all of us were like, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. That's what we were all thinking. I mean, I'm sure everyone thought that too. But I mean, I was excited to be back for sure. And I know my teammates were really excited for me as well. And I mean, thankfully, I was on the younger side of it and I wasn't a senior. And thankfully, we only had one senior at that moment, or we had two, and one ended up coming back for a fifth year, anyways. So we weren't losing a whole class. So we knew we were going to be fine. Everyone was going to be back the next year, and we could just pick up right where we started.
What kind of added pressure did that add, or I guess take away, knowing that you had kind of this built-in time to rehab?
Um, I think it was very motivating because so my freshman year, obviously, I took like the back seat of playing, but I used like being a vocal person to fill that kind of role and learn from the sidelines and see what things work and what didn't work, and just helping my teammates along the way from a different perspective. And I think that really motivated me because they could tell I cared for them deeply, because I could have just sat there and not said anything and just be sad, which it's very challenging, something to go through. I've done it once before. So I know it takes a lot to go through that. But ultimately, knowing that my team was there for me, we were so close the entire time. And every day someone's checking in on me, like seeing how I'm doing. And like, even if my coach told me, hey, can you turn the lights on the field? I would ask my trainer, be like, hey, can I jog over there to go do it? Like, I was just so excited to get back into it. And um, just had like this kind of chip on my shoulder, knowing that I hadn't been able to fully prove myself to my teammates with those little 2 months freshman year. Um, it was a big push for me.
So normally when athletes get injured and they're sidelined for anywhere from 2 weeks to a year, they
Mhm.
kind of take on a different role in their team dynamic. Did you see that happening even though you were so new to the program?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's part of the reasons why Mandy recruited me. I think she could tell just from those club days that I was that kind of person to be like, hey, let's bring it together, figure this out, and then let's get the next one. So I do recall one time at practice, I like raised my hand because they stopped to play and they were like, all right, we need to figure this out. And I raised my hand and I was like, this is what needs to happen. Like, this is what's going to make it work. And everyone just kind of was silent for a second. And then everyone just started cheering because they were like, okay, that's what you need to do. Like, we love that. And I think that's also the biggest jump from high school to college, is that that feedback is so crucial. And like, everyone wants it so bad. And you're surrounded by all these people that want to get better. Whereas in high school, it might just be a hobby. So all these people want to be better, they want to succeed. And any way that they can get that through feedback from their coaches, their teammates, even a player that can't physically be on the field with them, they appreciate it so much. So I think, again, that was what got me through it, was my teammates being like, what do you see? Come off the field. Hey, what do you see? What can I do? Things like that, just to help them improve.
So did you find that kind of being in the atmosphere of that new role helped with your mental state coming back from injury?
I think so. I think, I mean, this time recovering was a lot easier because the first time it wasn't just my ACL, it was pretty much everything. So I was on a slower track. I wasn't progressing as well. And then with this one, my mom was pretty upset with me, but I was walking on day 4 out of surgery. And I was like, I can make it to the bathroom. I'm fine. But it was like night and day how like the difficulty. So seeing me progress a lot faster, like I don't remember everything from the first time I did it. It was 4 years prior, but I knew that things were going a lot better. And that definitely helped a lot. And with my teammates, again, like they just saw like one week I would be off crutches and the next week I could be on like the underwater treadmill, and like these things were happening so quick. And they were very excited for me along the way. And I think that is what helped me with the recovery being easier than the first time, my teammates being there for me. And honestly, like I felt so close with my team instantly, and just being able to cheer them on. I like had a little stat sheet too. I was doing my own thing. So I was given that role too by writing some things down during the games. But I was just so over the moon, like seeing all these things come together with how hard he would work. And I was just happy to be there, honestly.
And then at what point did you learn about Morgan's message? Did someone tell you about it? I mean, how did you get involved?
So I saw it like online and come about, and I started seeing all these athletes that I knew, again from like these big programs, like starting to join. And we have a lot of ties to Duke, and my coach actually recruited Morgan to Duke because she worked there for a while. And I also think that lacrosse is such a growing sport that not everyone knows about it. I mean, we would see people in the grocery store and they're like, "Oh, what's lacrosse? Like, we'd love to come, but what is it?" Like, they just don't know. And um, I wanted to be able to amplify any kind of story I could, and this being obviously based around Morgan, but like being able to amplify lacrosse and like her story, and letting everyone know that's maybe not as familiar that these things happen in other sports as well, and just growing that awareness through what is a smaller but growing sport at the time. um, I think that was what was really special to me. So I reached out and wanted to become an ambassador last summer, and even though I was going to be a senior, I still wanted to at least try to start it and see who would want to follow my footsteps. um, I started at it kind of blindly in the fall, and I had or liaison that she actually went to ECU as well. So she was super excited that I was bringing it there. And I reached out to my team, and like 3 of the freshmen were like, "Oh, I want to be in it." I was like, "Okay, so we're going to be doing this for a long time. I have no worries." And initially, it was a little tougher to get other teams involved, just like finding that time to break down what Morgan's message is and what it's about. But finding that time with everyone's crazy schedules, everyone's on different times and everything. But eventually we got 2 more, one from swim and dive and one from softball. So that's when we kind of like kicked it off. The beginning of the spring semester in January, we kind of did like an information meeting, and my team was there, and again, softball and dive. And from there, we just started talking about what's going to happen, what our expectations are, and basically, this is for everyone to just take a deep breath and like share whatever they need to. And I think that was the most rewarding thing before we were able to reach out to other teams, was seeing my team open up. And it was something that even if you weren't someone that spoke up, because there are questions at the end of each slide that has covers different topics, but even if you weren't someone that opened up, you were able to see your teammates be vulnerable. And it was just so awesome to know that they trust the team so much with being able to share that and like get it off their chest. And that led to more people talking. And we would finish the slideshow in 15 minutes, but then we would talk about it for another 30. And that was just amazing to be a part of. Everyone walked away and was like, "I needed that. That was awesome. Let's do it again like next week." So it was really great.
And then what kind of campus initiatives do you guys do? Do you fundraise? Is it more of just an information dispersal?
Yeah, so I think that was kind of what we were struggling with, since we just started it and we didn't have, someone older than us that had more experience. So I was kind of going at it the same way as the freshmen who were looking at me, and I was like, okay, well, let me reach out and see. And there is a ambassador group chat, and if you had a question, you could reach out to these hundreds of other players, and they would be right there to be like, oh, I did this one time. So we did do a Giving Tuesday, which is where we just raised money for Morgan's Message. And then we had lacrosse put on their first dedication game. And we also had like a little Venmo card as well for those that may have not seen the Giving Tuesday who could make a contribution. And the dedication game, we were lucky enough to share it with ODU because they have a chapter as well. So they had t-shirts and we had t-shirts, and we had like a little speech given while we were warming up, just to kind of let the fans know what it is and why we are celebrating it. Um, and so that's pretty much what we've done right now. And then while school was coming to a close, we met with two of our associate athletic directors, and they were like, we love what you're doing. We want to make sure we get the word out, and not just about Morgan's Message, but the biggest thing of giving out those numbers and giving out those resources and letting everyone on campus know that they have so many people that are truly there for them. And they've been preaching it forever. I mean, I heard it my freshman year too, but it's the initiatives and those steps that need to be taken to make it seem more available, because everyone's a little timid to reach out, and we just want everyone to know that it's okay to. So we started to make plans about that. And Sydney Yoder is our softball ambassador, and she made this flyer that just has all the resources, and we're making sure that we link the like our posts with ECU athletics and all of the teams, so it's not just something they see that's a bunch of words and scroll by. Like, we have to know what's going to catch the student's eye. And um, before we even talk to, so Mike Hanley is, he's an athletic director, and he's kind of in charge of lacrosse. I forget what other teams he is, but he's lacrosse. And he was talking to John Gilbert, who's our big guy at the top. And he was like, how do we get students involved? And he was like, well, we have students involved in this manner, and we just need to spread it out. And so, like, they were very excited to learn that we are starting this, because they want to talk to us so that we know how to get it, you know, um, everyone more involved. And that way it's not just the people above us telling us like, hey, do this, do this, do this. It's a lot easier when it's coming from your peers.
Is that difficult to do something that's so student-led?
I think so. But we did have a good discussion about it and trying to figure out what we can do. And again, we're all like, they're going at it blindly, they're asking us, and we're just kind of like leading it together, going like bouncing off ideas off of each other, just to kind of figure out which is the best way to go. And I was like, oh, well, I'm happy to be a part of this. I am leaving and graduating in a week, but I'm always here. And I think there were some really great ideas that were being developed, and I think it was a great discussion to have, just like kind of putting everything out there again, seeing what the best alternative is, and then just moving forward with that. And if it doesn't work out, we try something else. But I think it's great to have the department's input as well as the players' input.
So when I was looking at Morgan's Message, her kind of transition through college is very similar to yours.
Yeah.
She had an injury and she had support,
Hmm.
but it just ended so differently than yours. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think everyone's battle is different. And I think that's the hardest thing to understand, is that someone may be suffering, but it looks a lot different than someone else. And it is kind of hard to understand what someone's going through and how you can help. And ultimately, you never know what to do. Everyone's different. Everyone needs something else. And some people are more likely to talk about it and some people aren't. And it's just, it's such a crazy thing to understand. And I think that's why it's so important that all of these athletes that are becoming involved with Morgan's message are speaking up and just creating this platform of this is a safe space and it's okay, because there never really was one. I mean, there's some things that like come up and it's like, yeah, that's great, but like who's actually doing it? And that's kind of, someone needs to take initiative to start something, be a part of it and spread it and like make it more personable to everyone else, because I know we've all read countless things about all of these different organizations, but the next step is making it more personable to make people feel something. And hopefully it's not in the worst way imaginable. It just needs to be something that they're encouraged to be a part of, because so many other people are there opening up and they want you to know it's okay to do the same thing.
1,026 ambassadors, 37 states, 483 high schools and colleges. There's obviously a need. There are obviously people who are buying into this process. What would you say to someone who looks at those numbers and says, I could be one of them? I want to get involved.
I would say do it. I know, I feel like at the end of each meeting that we had with just our team, it was, if you want to do more, let us know, or like give us feedback on how you felt about these so we can help. If you maybe don't want to be in that more of like a leadership role. Um, but I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, if your teammates are involved with it, it definitely helps to see them being involved, and then you're like, oh, that looks awesome, like I want to do it as well. So I think that's the best thing. And if there's someone at a school that doesn't have an ambassador and you're thinking about it, then do it, because it's going to have such a great effect on everyone. And it really does mean the world to be that first person to be able to start something.
What do you think is the most difficult thing about playing women's college sports that kind of ties all of these ambassadors together?
Yeah. Um, I mean, there's
For
probably a
any
few
for any
things.
for any kind of initiative, more than
Yeah.
1,000 people spread all over the country is a successful amount of people
Yeah.
to advocate for something.
Yeah. I think the toughest thing about women's sports is the constant need to feel like you have to prove yourself that much more, because I mean, we all know there's not equal pay amongst professional sports, and you see the TV viewers and things like that, and you're like, well, everyone that I've ever seen that has watched their first, at least women's lacrosse game, they're like, that was awesome. Like, I love it. It's so great. And I'm like, I know it is. Like, it is awesome. And I think what's awesome is, especially with like the professional lacrosse league coming out and all of these like big time names that like I grew up watching, and they're constantly like, what's the word, like vouching for women's sports. And I just think it's so great to see all of those people that little kids looked up to, like taking charge and being like, this is what needs to happen. Like, all of these women are amazing. And we shouldn't have to have that like added pressure that like we're not on the same level, or we're not this like just as good, because you know we all made it to whatever school you made it to. Like, it was hard work to get there, and it's even harder to stay there and like go through those lists and early mornings and all those long practices. Like, it's hard. It's probably the hardest thing like I've had to do, is just making that adjustment to what it's like. And I think it is important for all of these women to stick together. And that's what's amazing about like this platform. It is a majority of women's ambassadors, but there are also male ambassadors, which is also awesome. We would love to get more of them involved. But I think it's so great to just see this massive group of people come together, because they know something needs to change, and they want to be a part of the change, and they want to do it not only for themselves but literally for their team and their school and every school in the state, like they want to do something that will affect someone positively wherever they are, and even if they don't know it, like in your heart you're making a difference. So
Knowing that women's sports are getting more media attention, they're getting televised more often, the entire US women's national team is finally getting paid equally. I mean,
yeah.
what do those kind of road kind of um building blocks do for you looking at the state of women's sports, not only mentally but also physically going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's great. I think the best part about, being on ESPN for the national championship, that was awesome. And a sold out stage, like that was insane to see. I think it's just, hold on, I lost my train of thought.
You're good.
I had something really good too. um, oh well, I'll just make something up. So yeah, I think seeing all of that happen, and getting more viewers, I think, like I said, someone watches the game and they're like, this is awesome, because they see these insane athletes that they've never seen lacrosse before, and they're watching like the best of the best on TV right now, and they're seeing that, like, wow, like these are some impressive athletes, and it doesn't matter if it's a women's sport or not. They're like, oh my goodness, like this is the best thing to watch and see. And I think that's what's awesome about it, is because, like you said, the US team they're promoting it. They're such big role models to everyone. And even if it's not lacrosse related, but like seeing these women who are done with lacrosse and they continue to play pro and they're representing the US, seeing them train the way that they do and just have so much heart for the sport, and again, not only for their team but for everyone out there, I think that's just incredible to see. And the best part, again, is those people tuning in for the first time, seeing like, wow, this is no joke, like this is legit right now. And it's so great.
So when do you think, and this is more of a hypothetical, but when do you think that we as spectators and athletes will be able to stop talking about mental health? I mean, what do you think has to be done to
um
stop this dialogue from being a necessity that athletes feel like they have to talk about?
yeah, I mean, I feel like it just has to keep growing, personally. And I know there's so many great people out there that have been on bigger platforms to make a difference. And it's the people that there's some that are still current athletes, which is props to them for finding time in their super busy schedule. But it's also those that are done with athletics and have moved on past college sports, that are continuing to build on those big platforms. And I think everyone thinks of Victoria Garrett, like she's all over the place. And I absolutely love it. Just seeing her on TV. I was in the airport and saw her on TV. I was like, let's go. Like, I love it. And seeing people like that, just continuing to speak up, and maybe their audience is different, but that's a good thing. So it's not just based on those collegiate athletes, because it is, like I said, it's very hard to be one, and having all of these things going on, to worry about, like adding something else might seem as a stressor, but it's really not. And I think that's something that is important about Morgan's message, is to just continue, like, letting people know, like, this is a good thing, I promise, like you're gonna love this, like this is for you and it will help in the long run. But yeah, continuing to be loud and like aware, or spreading awareness, past college athletics, I think that's huge in order for everything to really be normalized.
Can you send me direct message or email a list of resources that you guys use to advocate? I would
Yeah,
love to include them in the episode,
yeah, for sure.
both at ECU and just nationally as well.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then as we conclude, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, either about your journey to ECU or Morgan's message?
Ooh.
If there isn't, that's fine too. But this is normally the time in the episode where I say, my questions for you are done. Do you have questions for me or anything that you think I missed?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think I'm really happy that I made that first step to be a part of this. And it was probably the most rewarding thing about having my senior year and being able to make that impression on not only the girls in my class, even the fifth years and all of those girls younger than me, like being able to start that and see all of these younger girls on my team wanting to be involved in it. It was just like so heartwarming to see them so inspired by what Morgan's message is about. And I think I know that it's only going to be a good thing for our team and like for the rest of time. I have full trust in those girls that are ambassadors now. And I just can't wait to see all the great things that they do.
I'm really excited to put this episode together. I think that Morgan's message is just such a great initiative.
Hmm.
And every once in a while, I mean, the majority of the athletes that I have on talk about themselves and personal stories. But every once in a while, I come across this initiative or a brand that's dealing specifically with mental health advocacy for athletes. And like, I love showcasing them. And
Yeah.
especially one like this that you have a personal connection to. I mean, your coach recruited her.
Hmm.
And then it's become kind of this national bonding experience. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think so as well.
So this episode will come out on January, February, March, April, May, June 15th.
Okay.
So you have about 2 weeks. If anything changes, anything you want to include between now and then, keep me updated. Just DM me. I'll add it to the script. And then if you can send me a picture of you that I can use for social media, that would be great. And I will talk to you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. This was so
Bye.
fun. Bye.
Thanks. Let's start recording right now. Let's just start out with you and Morgan both going on to compete in D1 sports. I mean, did that start? I mean, did you guys start in such different paths, or did you start in the same sport and kind of branch off?
We started everything together. I mean, every sport that she did, I did, and up until about high school was probably when we started veering off a little bit differently. And eventually, yes, like Morgan wanted to go to a D1 sport or for lacrosse, and I actually wanted to step back a little bit. So I was actually on the club team, equestrian team at my school, because I sports was my life and I loved it, but I wanted to be a student for a little bit. So but I mean, yeah, everything from when we were little, we started, riding, quote unquote, like horses, basically just sit on the back of them when we were 4. And then, we got into soccer when we were really into soccer for a couple of years up until our team folded. I think we're 6th grade when the team folded, something like that. And that opened up the opportunity for Morgan and I to like really dive into lacrosse. So even though started playing lacrosse in the 3rd grade, my mom and my dad were actually our first coaches. We just played on our little local club team there. And when our soccer team folded in 6th grade, that was 7th grade, was when Morgan and I tried out for our travel team, Cardinal Lacrosse. And fortunately, I broke my collarbone about 2 weeks beforehand, so I couldn't go out that year. So I was technically I tried out a year again after her. And man, that was it. Once Morgan got around those girls at Cardinal, it was like that just kind of sealed her fate. I mean, she found some of her best friends there. Two of them, actually three of them, helped us co-found Morgan's Message. And they all throughout high school and all throughout college, I mean, that was Morgan's like turning point, I guess. Like, just great. Like, she had found her family outside of her family was that Cardinal girls lacrosse team. Because I mean, she coached for them a little bit when she got to school. She stayed very much involved after she graduated high school. And like I said before, I mean, we're still really close with some of those girls, that all because of Cardinal.
And then growing up, I mean, was there any kind of jockeying for position within your family? Like sometimes happens with twins, especially when you're competing like you guys were for time and activities.
Well, it lucked out that Morgan and I, we played different positions. So in that sense, like I stopped playing lacrosse my freshman year of high school. So, but I mean, the 6 years that we played together, we were both middies, but she was more of like an offensive middie and I was more a defensive middie. And we used to joke like that we would just like be the little team. Like I'd get it in the defense and I'd pass it to her and she'd go and score. And like we would just work together. So in that sense, we didn't need to quite literally like fight each other because we had different interests in it. But we just worked really, really well together. I mean, naturally, because we're twins, and it was just, I mean, yeah, no, it was great. It was weird when I decided to like stop playing lacrosse just so I could focus more on, other sports or equestrian. There is this one dad that we used to play with, like I was dad's with one of my friends, and I know he meant it in the nicest way, but in the moment I got mad. He was like, well, who's gonna make Morgan look good now? And I was like, I know you didn't mean it, but my job's not to help Morgan. Also, Morgan's very talented. She doesn't need me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna move on now. But no, I'm because of that, like Morgan and I, we complemented each other. We never competed against each other. We always complimented each other for that. So
And then when she started getting recruited, I mean, Duke was not the only school that wanted her. How did she
no,
decide to stay there?
she decided. So my parents knew that she was gonna play D1. Like you said, multiple schools were looking at her, and it was like her dream come true. But they told her, you need to find 4 things about the school outside of the program of why you want to go to that school. And it can't be the girls are great, the locker room is fully stocked or whatever. Like, it has to be 4 things outside of sports altogether. And so I think she loved the size of the school. She loved the area, like the Chapel, Raleigh, Durham area. And she loved, I mean, it's a very good school, Duke, the reputation. I mean, how can you beat that? And then they had, I can't remember the 4th one. It might have been, they had exactly like what major she was looking into. I can't remember what the 4th one was, but that is ultimately how she decided on Duke, was for all of the schools, like the final couple schools, they just couldn't relate. Like, she couldn't think of full 4 things. And Duke, it was like boom, 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 boom. So
When you two went to completely different states to do your college experience, how did that feel? I mean, was that the first time you guys had ever been so far away for such an extended period of time?
oh yeah. Yeah, that was our first big separation. And it honestly, it brought us a lot closer. Not that we weren't close before, but it just kind of made us, actively reach out more often, because she wasn't just there for me to check in with anymore. But it was weird. I didn't have the best freshman year experience, and seeing Morgan like thriving in her experience, it was kind of hard. Like, I was super happy for her. But at one point I was looking at transferring schools because I was like, I'm not loving it here. And so I was in the process of applying to Duke and East Carolina, where my brother went. So I was like, I just want to be with my family. Ideally Duke, but I was like, I didn't have like the high school like grades to get into it. And I was like, I don't know what 1 year of college is going to do for me. I ended up like not actually applying because I decided to stay at USC and like make it work. But it was definitely a change. I mean, she and I, like, we would talk about like deeper things going on with us. It wasn't just like superficial, like what's going on. Yeah, that it really, we got a much like deeper connection from being like physically separated.
So when she had that injury in 2017, when did you learn about it?
I think it was like the next day. So it was, yeah, our sophomore year. I think I learned about the next day. And I mean, she said that everything was fine. Like she was okay with it. Like obviously it was, you know, earth shattering to her because it was only 10 days before the season. But weirdly enough, I really wanted to go into surgery after school. So I asked her, I was like, hey, can you ask your doctor if I can come see it, come watch it? And naturally they said no because I'm family, but I was like, okay, well, like, I can't do that, but do you still want me to come up and see you? And she was like, no, it's okay. I think it might be a little overwhelming having everybody there. But I mean, I knew she was super, super bummed because they were setting her up to like actually be able to have like a lot of playing time in the spring. Just from how she was playing in the fall and from what coaches were saying, like this was actually going to be a very big year for Morgan. And for it to all be taken away from her 10 days before the season or the first game, like, I don't know. I guess I was more worried about like the physical injury than the mental toll that it would take on her, at least at the moment. So
That is credited quite frequently as being just kind of a catalyst into this spiral. Would you agree? Did you know that was happening?
because Morgan didn't like to talk about it directly. She didn't like to feel like you were confronting her about it. That's what it felt like to her. So she and I had like a fun relationship where she knew I knew, but we wouldn't talk about it directly. But I mean, it only got like amplified, after the injury. And then she kept saying that like she was okay. But then, as after a couple months went on and there are a couple more signs that things were not going well, it was hard from my perspective because I didn't know what to do. I mean, you've got, doctors and coaches and my mom, like all trying to get every single detail from her. And I knew that was exhausting at some point. So my past approach to not talk about it got a little bit harder. She was diagnosed with anxiety senior year of high school. There was only one other time where somebody that she knew spoke up about their suicidal thoughts, and she was hospitalized. She was taken out of school and she was very much hovered. Like her world was very much controlled by her parents and the doctors just to make sure that she wouldn't take her own life. And I think Morgan was afraid if she did, that would happen to her as well. Which, I mean, can't blame her. We probably would have. Again, we were so ignorant about how to handle all of this. And I mean, we just didn't know. I mean, we don't have a history of this in my family. So we really just didn't know what to do. And I think that that's why she was nervous to talk about it. She was nervous that, you know, her team would be taken away from her, or her team would look at her differently. The team would be nervous to have her around. And she didn't want to seem like a liability, I believe. I mean, and that's just my guess, but
I mean, looking back, what were some things that you feel like could have tuned you in had you been looking at them with the full picture? I mean, was there anything? Because sometimes there's not. But it feels like you guys were in such contact that maybe something just got missed.
I mean, like our parents knew about her grades dropping. They knew about her, like we all knew Morgan slept 22 hours a day, which I even knew at the time that was like a sign of, or a symptom of depression. And she would send me like little pictures of like her holding up her art, and I could see a band-aid on her wrist or something. And then if I asked her, she would say like, oh, I burned it when I was taking something out of the oven. I was like, okay, she clearly doesn't want to talk about it. Like, I'm gonna redirect. I wish I didn't redirect. She was showing us signs. I just didn't know that they were signs. That's all.
I mean,
I just wish I knew better.
going forward, how do you want people like Morgan to be remembered?
I want them to be remembered as, sorry, let me clarify, like as if like if she had survived, or if she
The way that she was. I mean, like, how do you want the kind of person that she was to live on?
I mean, Morgan can make like anyone laugh. She had a weird dry sense of humor. A lot of it was at my expense. She used to always say that like I was the uglier and stinkier twin, and she'd make little memes about it, like like her just like jumping up and like not touching the ground, and she would say like, and like the floor is lava, like the floor is being the uglier twin, and like tag me, like put me down there on the floor or something. And I'm like, thanks, Morgs. I mean, her Finsta also, like, it's just was weird. I'm like, how do you even think about this? Like, she would make videos. Oh, what song is it? It's like some rap song, but like of all Shrek pictures. She had a weird thing with Shrek. And she replaced like she replaced probably like 10, 15 pictures. Like my mom has pictures all over the house of like our family and everything. And she randomly picked 10 of them and just replaced them with images of Shrek. And like over months, my mom would find them. Like she thought she got them all, and then she'd find another one. And she was a very, very caring person. Somebody from her lacrosse team, like that from I think it was the club team, that said that they were stressing about like making dinner or something like that because they were studying for exams, and she went to the grocery store, got her a whole bunch of groceries, and then was like, here you go. like didn't expect anything back, like just from like a little comment of like, oh, I need to go to the store, but like I don't have time or something like that. So Morgan went to the store for her. And there was another time was right before she died. She was talking to one of our high school friends who is a leader for Young Life Camp. And she said that there's this one girl who her parents couldn't afford it this year, but she goes every year and she was really looking forward to it. Her parents couldn't afford it. And then Morgan was just like, here, I'll pay for her fee. Like, not even like a second guess. She just saw someone that like needed help and it's like, here. So I think she just, I think it was because she knows like how bad it can feel to be down and alone, and she didn't want anyone else to feel like that. So that came out of being a really, really selfless, caring person with a dark sense of humor.
How did you find out?
I was home in Charlotte. I had just woken up. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. I was off from the hospital that day. And then my mom and dad called me and they're like, hey, are you awake? And I was like, no, joking. They're like, you need to wake up. And immediately my heart stopped because my brother was still working night shift at that point because he's a police officer and I was, or deputy sheriff, I don't actually know the terms, but I was like, oh my God, like Austin was shot. Like that's where my mind first went. But I was like, I just asked him like, what's going on? And then my mom goes, Morgan died last night. And just like immediately, screaming, like I was just like, oh my God, like, are you serious? Like, and my parents and we just went back and forth, just saying, I'm sorry to each other, like a whole bunch. I asked my mom like how she died, and she was like, that doesn't matter right now. Like, we'll go over that later. Sorry, I'm like really stuffy. And then I remember them saying, you know, Tucker, my now fiance, he says, he's outside in the hallway. We already told him he's gonna come in when we hang up, which is exactly what happened. And then they're like, but Austin doesn't know, so don't text him because he worked the night. So he was like, Austin doesn't know, don't tell him yet. And then I just started. I remember I threw my phone as hard as I could. And I just screamed and cried for, I don't even know how long. I think it was like 20 minutes of just straight like screaming, and then it was just cold and numb and just, yeah, for that last little bit.
And your parents, were they with her? How did they find out?
No, they sorry, before I answer that, I see that we have like 9 minutes left.
So
Do you want to like reset really quickly?
In the event that this ends, just get on with the same link that we scheduled with for today. It'll still work. It resets.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway,
first of all, you do not have to apologize at all.
There's a lot of sniffles in this. Can you remind me what was the question again? I'm sorry.
I just asked if your parents were there with her, or if
that's right. Oh no, they were actually, so because my sister was at her apartment at Duke. So we had just left we were all at the beach together. My sister was going back to Duke to finish cleaning out her apartment. She had my dad's truck to throw everything in there, and my parents were in Virginia. She was supposed to come back on the 10th because she had a dentist appointment on the 11th. The 10th comes around and she gives like some excuse of like, oh, my friend's in town. I just want to like have dinner with her one time. I'll just wake up super early on the 11th and come visit, or I'll still make the dentist appointment. Don't worry. My parents, they're like, seriously, like you're going to be cutting this so last minute, but that's fine, whatever. And then they realized so she missed the dentist appointment. They're like, okay, that's really weird. Like, what's going on? And she was also supposed to meet one of our like lifelong friends for drinks the 11th, like the night of the 11th. So we were like, okay, like maybe she skipped her dentist appointment, but like whatever, like she's still coming home to see Savannah. And then like hours go by, she's not responding. They're like, what's going on? Like, and they also text me, they're like, have you heard from Morgan yet? And again, not thinking anything of it, I was like, not since yesterday, the 10th. So hours go by, she misses drinks with Savannah, and now my parents are like really freaking out. They're like, we haven't heard from her all day and she's missed, like that's a big deal. And we haven't gotten a call like from a hospital saying that she was in a car accident or anything like that. So they called the non-emergency police down in Durham and said, hey, you need to go check on our daughter. And a couple hours go by. My parents are a wreck. They're just pacing, like they can't sleep. So they were just like, you know what, screw this. Let's get in the car. We're driving down to Duke. It's only 4 hours. Let's go. And then about 1 hour out is when the police call my parents and say, we found her. And I don't even know fully their story, like what they did or how they reacted. I just know that they got the call about an hour out and they said, okay, well, let's go get the truck and then just immediately turn around and go back to Virginia. So they drove all night. I think they got the call around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock on July 12th. And then they just drove back, and I don't think they slept that night and when they called me at 9 o'clock. So.
And then how did you move forward from that? I mean, what were the next few days like?
Oh God. Oddly enough, so once all day the 12th, I was like numb. I didn't eat anything. My fiance knows like my favorite meal is like pesto pasta, and I love to do puzzles. So that's what we did for like 8 hours on the 12th, because I was like, I can't do anything. I don't want to talk. I don't want to think. I just need to do something. Obviously, I was thinking about Morgan the whole time. Like I was crying the entire time. The 13th, my grandparents flew down to come get me. We're friends with someone who like has his own like little plane. So we just called and we're like, hey, I can't get on like a regular airline right now. Like I'm going to cause a scene in the airport. He was like, yeah, of course, no problem. So they flew down to come get me on the 13th. And then we had a lot of visitors. And for me, going from complete solitude to like a whole lot of visitors, it was way overwhelming. I just kind of stayed in like an extra room and like had like one person come talk to me like at a time, because I was like, no. And then It was either the 13th or the 14th. I think it was the 13th. No, not that it matters. It was the 14th that we were all at the house. We were just like hanging out, and then a group of them wanted to go over to possibly see like where we would hold the funeral. And I didn't want to go. I was like, no, I'm just going to stay here. Because again, it was just me and like one other person. I was like, I need some quiet, like the overstimulation is a lot. And that's when Megan Burney and her dad, one of the co-founders of Morgan's Message, they came over with a whole bunch of food, and they just like cooked this big extravagant dinner for all of us. Like, it was perfect because like we all knew, like, elephant in the room, we know why they're here, but like they didn't talk about it. Like they were just like, yeah, we're cooking dinner, what's up? And I was like, sweet. And then it wasn't until the next day that was like the first time that I was like, this is kind of okay, only because I was like, no, I'm planning this funeral, or like I'm making the decisions. Like obviously, like, you know who to contact for the flowers, but like I want to design what the flowers look like, and you know who to contact for this thing, but like I'm going to design what they look like. And I was in charge of making this collage of her, like this little photo video of her. And that honestly, that was really fun, actually surprisingly fun to look through all of the pictures. I mean, my mom had thousands of printouts, and we're just like flipping through them. And, you know, my brother was helping me with that too. Savannah and Tara Markel, who are basically our sisters, like was helping us too. And it was just like the first time that any of us were like smiling. And so I was like, it's like kind of nice, because then you remember like all of the funny things that she did in those moments. And we're like, okay, so planning the funeral was a great distraction for me, because I was done with just like sitting around and doing nothing. So it was actually pretty nice. I was probably very annoying to everybody because I got a little bossy. I was like, no, this is what we're doing and stuff like that. But I don't know. For me, it was a nice coping mechanism. So
Okay, I'm going to end the recording now. Click the link that got you to this Zoom. If it does not work, check your email. I'll send another one.
Okay.
Okay, see you in a bit.
sorry.
Let's start with who chose Morgan's Message. I mean, how did that conversation start? How far after the funeral did conversation of doing something in her memory start?
It probably started that fall, sometime like August to December, just kind of like talking about it, like what could we have done, like what would Morgan have needed. Like we wanted to do something, but we weren't really sure. It was more just talk. Like none of us had the energy or the mental stability to actually do anything. It was just talking, like we want to do something about it. But then it was right before our 23rd birthday. So in May, a couple of her close friends like started reaching out, saying that like they wanted to come see the gravesite, or they were just like checking in because they didn't know what to say. I mean, they lost Morgan too. We didn't know what to say to them. So, but it was right before her 23rd birthday in May that people started coming out, and we're like, all right, because they were also, is there anything that we could have done? Like, what could we have done? And we're like, okay, well, obviously can't for Morgan, but like maybe we could for somebody else. And then it was right like that, our birthday weekend, that everybody came out, and it was just like in our front yard. We were trying to talk, and we're like, I think it would have been nice to hear other stories, like to hear other people talk about it. And so that's what it was originally supposed to be, like just a podcast. We're like, I mean, we'll see like how far it goes, but like maybe it's something that Morgan would have liked to listen to. Little did we know what else it was going to become. I mean, and the podcast wasn't even developed until like that was one of the last things that we developed, oddly enough, just because we got like just taken away with like there's so much more opportunity that we didn't really think about. So that's all it was supposed to be, just a podcast. But so we launched it in July 11th, 2020, on Morgan's like 1 year anniversary. And it was a couple months later, it was at least during the school year, where Anna Callahan, Morgan's teammate from Duke, reached out and said, like, she was close with Morgan. She's like, hey, I want to talk about Morgan, and I want to talk about mental health. Like, is it okay if I kind of like form something at Duke, like just to like under Morgan's message, but that I can just talk to somebody? And we're like, yes, absolutely. Like, that's a great idea. And then very shortly after, Morgan Alexander from Syracuse did the same thing. She's like, I want to talk about mental health. Like, is it okay if I like have like a little Morgan's message club at Syracuse? And we're like, that's 2 people like within a month that, and we're like, this could be something. So then Claire Kehoe took that on, and it absolutely blew up in the best way possible. Because now we have like our whole education program. We've got over 1,000 ambassadors. It might be over 1,100 now, I'm not sure, at over like 500 campuses. And it's just the education program and the ambassador program is amazing. It's one of the things that like I wasn't even involved in starting it, and I'm like just so proud of Claire and everyone involved, like the liaisons that are there for the ambassadors, just everybody that made this program what it is.
Yeah, on the website says 1,026 ambassadors, 37 states, and 483 high schools and colleges around the country.
We actually need to update that actually, because we have
great.
Yeah. We try to update it at least once a week. It's just like with the influx, it's hard to come in, but yeah, it's and we've got one of Morgan's old coaches now lives in Canada, so we've got 2 ambassadors in Canada as well. So we're like, yes.
How does it make you feel that her message is reaching now a new country?
Mm-hmm. I love it. You know, obviously it's sad. Like, I wish that there was something like this for Morgan, but I love that. I mean, the number of times that we've heard, you know, Morgan's message gave me the strength to talk to my parents, or, you know, it gave me a community that I just wasn't getting at home or at my school. And the like it, like Morgan's message like saved my life, because it gave me the strength to realize like I'm not alone. Like, this is, these thoughts like, or these things are wrong, and I recognize that I'm not the only one experiencing it, type of thing. And I mean, just last week actually, I had an ambassador reach out to me for something, and I mean, like, we've been in constant contact, or almost constant contact, for the last like 3 days, just because like she needed somebody, and I was just so glad that, you know, me and Claire and my mom could have been there for her. So I mean, I love that Morgan's message, that it's getting spread and talked about. And other programs, like we work a lot with the Hidden Opponent, and you know, we just had an interview with Holinsky's Hope for Tyler Holinsky and Katie's Save, Katie Meyer's parents. I mean, we're all on the same team. Like, whether it's us or them, the point is the message is getting out there. So yes, Morgan's message, I love our reach. I love it. but then when you combine like all of our organizations together, it's even more amplified. And I'm just glad that it's being talked about. And a lot of people say like, oh, I had a very similar story to Morgan. And I'm like, yeah, it's not as rare as you might think. So,
I mean, she was at Duke. They have an athletic department that is pretty incredible. They have sports psychologists and athletic trainers and nutritionists.
mhm.
What makes Morgan's message different than, for example, a school sports psychologist that works with the athletic department?
I think the reason it's going so well is because it is all peer to peer. And it's 100%, volunteer. Like no one's making them do this. And it's literally just athletes talking to other athletes. There's no adults in the room. There's no one with authority who can take away your starting position if you're worried about that. And I mean, it builds that community to just like you end up talking about like really intimate topics. And so like you get closer with the people that you share with. And I think that's what it is, really, just the peer-to-peer bonding and openness about it.
Why is it important for Morgan's message and Helinski's hope and the Katie Meyer Foundation to work together?
Because all of them provide their unique way of talking about this. And again, it's not a competition between us. That would be ridiculous. Like we root for them and they root for us because we're all in this stupid club of, we lost somebody and we don't want that. We don't want anybody else to experience it. And so it's more impactful, I believe, when you see multiple sets of parents like come together and put their foot down and just be like, something needs to change. And again, I mean, the more organizations or nonprofits that talk about this, the more prevalent it's going to be to the NCAA and to just schools in general. So it's not going to be avoidable, hopefully. Like that's the goal. Like you need more sports psychiatrists. You can't just have one. When you have 30 athletic trainers, you can't just have one sports psychiatrist. Like you need a couple more. So
and then moving forward, I mean, this already seems like it's gone rogue in terms of its impact from what you anticipated.
yes.
How do you see it into the future? I mean, do you have any new expansions planned? What kind of exciting things are going to be on the radar soon?
Yeah, well, we actually do. We have our ambassador at large program for either athletes who were in it in school and now they've graduated, or people or coaches who want to be more involved, or if you didn't even know about Morgan's message until after school, you can now bring Morgan's message outside of the campus. Like you can bring it to your job, or for athletes who are no longer athletes, like they're just out living their adult lives. And we have some amazing directors in charge of that. So I don't think it's like officially launched because they've just done like an intro meeting. We did our first intro meeting a couple weeks ago just to like lay the base and get everybody's ideas and introduce everybody. But that I'm very much looking forward to, because that's a whole other aspect of like people can have the feeling that they're losing their identity if they're no longer an athlete. They're like, this is what I've been all my life. What do you mean? I'm no longer a student, no longer an athlete. I'm just a college graduate? What? Like, so I'm really excited to see what that has to offer. But
Yeah, I think that's a really could be a crucial part of the conversation. Like, for example, a lot of the athletes that I talk to now have exited their sport and immediately felt this kind of identity crisis. Like, I've been playing my sport for 20 some years and now I'm done. Like, just cut off.
yeah,
I'll never be a football player again. I'll never play in a baseball diamond again. Who
yeah.
am I?
And that can be very, very hard for people to grasp.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And then what do you think about the rise in student athletes taking their own lives recently? I feel like it's been just far too prevalent just in the past year.
Yeah, that especially in the spring when there are 5 that I know of, probably way more that I'm just not aware of. Just within 2 months. I mean, it's really it's hard to swallow. It's hard to take that in. And I know a lot of us at Morgan's Message, we somewhat felt like we were failing because we're like, what is with this sudden surge? Why is this all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but like, why is this so prevalent right now? And as far as we know, none of the athletes who took their life knew about Morgan's Message. So in that sense, we didn't feel like we were letting down our community, but it's like if only we had reached to that team, because a lot of times we were at that school but not that team yet.
Wow.
I mean, Lauren Burnett at JMU, the softball player, me and another girl from Morgan's Message, we spoke to like Duke's Let's Talk, a group from a sports psychiatrist that started for athletes just like 3 days prior, but softball wasn't at the meeting. And I mean, it's awful. And so, not gonna lie, for a bit, like I got really down because I just felt so useless. Like, yes, I've heard all of these great stories about Morgan's Message, but when you hear about all these athletes taking their lives, especially back to back, I mean, I feel like you're not actually doing anything. Just personally, I can't speak for everyone at Morgan's Message. That was just personally, but then you have to remind yourself that, even though that team at the time didn't know about Morgan's Message, our ambassador was able to reach out to them, and our ambassadors were able to check in on their teammates and see how their teammates were doing with the aftermath. So I don't know. It's hard, but again, from it, Alana Miller's dad started a scholarship in her name, and then Katie Myers, her parents started Katie's Save. So I don't know. It's hard, but
How many more situations like this do you think need to happen before higher education takes note of it? And I feel like we should have
ideally
already
none, but
we should have already been to that point.
Yeah, ideally none, but I mean, that's not, I don't see that being the case. I don't know honestly, because it's such a hard, it's a very delicate thing to talk about. And I mean, part of the funding is going to have to come from, some of the sports funds. I'm trying to blank on it right now, but I mean, maybe the football team doesn't get brand new jerseys that year. Maybe we bring in another person for the staff. But if that's what they're used to, it's going to be hard to relocate where those funds go, because then everyone's going to throw their hands up, and unless it's like unified that no, that is way more important. Who cares about new uniforms if someone's life is being taken? Like, is that really the importance? But I don't know. And that was just an example. I don't even know if that's like true or not. So please don't hold me to that. But I mean,
it was more,
sadly, I don't think
more
it's
of a hypothetical question. I mean, when will action be taken? Because I feel like we're past that point.
I do too. I mean, everyone is screaming for change, but I mean, we had somebody write a letter. We had one of our ambassadors who independently, she just came to us and was like, do you think that this is okay? She wrote an email that was very well cited. She referred to the NCAA's like reports from 2016, and saying, like, calling them out and saying, like, this needs to stop. Here are some sources, like, here are some realistic solutions. She gave them 3 solutions with sources and cited, and one of them was calling out the NCAA from 6 years ago. And I mean, when I saw it, I was like, can we like email that to them like every hour of every day until they do something? Like, fill their inbox with it, because it was so perfectly well written. But I don't know what it's going to take.
And then, I mean, the athletes that have recently taken their own lives have all come from Division I institutions with hundreds of people employed to keep them successful, keep them grounded, keep them on track
Keep
to
their
graduate.
keep their body successful, not their mental state.
I really like that.
It's something that people don't realize, and this is an idea that is changing. But I mean, if you need a physical to be approved to play the sport, why don't you need like a mental health check to be able to play a sport? I mean, say it over and over again, mental health is health. Like, you need to, like, the brain is part of the body. Why are you examining every part of the body except the brain? So yes, there's hundreds of people on staff, but not focused on that. They're not worried about the mental state. There's one person to usually only one person to deal with all of the athletes. That you're not reaching all of the athletes then. I mean, that's physically impossible. So,
is there anything else that you think that I missed that you wanted to include in this episode?
I don't believe so. No, I think we really covered everything.
Anything that you wanted to get into more deeply? Anything that we talked about briefly that you wanted to revisit?
No, like I said, I think I kind of said it all.
Yeah.
When I did, and I don't want to. If I get talking about schools too much longer, I'm gonna get a little fired up, and I don't want to say anything that I'll regret, because I am very, very passionate about the school staffing. That's all.
I feel like you and I could probably go on a rant about that, but
we could, but it's probably not podcast. Yeah, probably not podcast appropriate. So.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? This is just a last call before we conclude for today.
Look on our website for merch. I don't know. Director of merchandise. Okay. It's naturally going to be there.
I want some swag.
Yeah.
Let's see when your episode is coming out. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I had one of your ambassadors that I found just kind of coincidentally as I was looking for athlete mental health stories, and I discovered Morgan's message through CeCe. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. this is an incredible story. And then I DM'd your Instagram, and then you popped up. And I'm like, I need to talk to you, because I think that you bring such an interesting, unique perspective to this conversation, because you're twins. And
Yeah.
still you felt like you didn't have the full story.
Yeah, big time. But I mean, as we just talked about it, but thank you so much for reaching out. I'm glad that you got connected with CeCe, and I'm glad you reached out to us. I mean, I yes, I cried, and sorry I was very sniffly, but I mean, I had a good time talking to you about all this.
So this episode will come out on the 15th. So you have a little bit over a week.
Okay.
If you can either DM me or email me a picture of you that I can use for social media. I would also really like if you could send me a picture of Morgan as well.
Yeah. Do you want a picture of like both of us together, or like just a picture of me and a picture of her? Or do you want a picture of us together?
Actually, a picture of you two together would be great.
Okay. Yeah, I got
Um,
lots of those.
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable. I really appreciate it. And I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, thank you for providing the outlet and for, having this podcast. So thank you.
I will talk to you in about a week. And I
All
hope you
right.
like the episode.
Thank you, Julia. Bye.
Bye.